Hello everyone, and thank you for attending today's webinar, the Open, Automated and Programmable Transport Network, sponsored by Ciena, Infinera, Juniper and Fujitsu. Before we begin, I wanted to cover a few housekeeping items. Underneath the slide view is the Q&A. If you have any questions during the webcast, you can type your question into the Q&A box and submit them to our speakers. All questions will be saved, so if we don't get to answer you, we may follow up via email. At the bottom of your audience console are multiple application widgets you can use. If you have any technical difficulties, please click on the yellow Help widget. Here you can find answers to common questions. A copy of today's slide deck is available for download in the green Resources widget. Towards the end of today's presentation, we'll ask you for your feedback. A survey is already open on your screen and will only take 1 minute to complete. Your feedback is extremely helpful. An on-demand version of the webcast will be available about 1 day after the event and can be accessed using the same audience link that was sent to you earlier today. I would now like to turn the event over to Heavy Reading's Senior Principal Analyst, Sterling Perrin.
Thanks, Becky, and hello. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sterling Perrin. I am with Heavy Reading, and I will be the moderator for today's webinar on Open, Automated, and Programmable Transport Network. This is a part of a special larger project, as noted, sponsored by Ciena, Fujitsu, Infinera, and Juniper. And we're really excited today to share actually a great deal of survey results from the project that are just now being made available. This is the first launch of any of the results. Here's a look at the agenda for the next hour. And then I'll also, in the next couple slides, I'll give a little bit more background on the project, as well as the demographics for the survey, and introduce our speakers. But once I do those introductions and introduce the project, we'll go into the meat of the survey results and have quite a bit of discussion among our panelists on the topics you see here. Timelines and requirements for automation in the transport network, cloud automation specifically, quite a bit of data on optical transport and automation, and then moving into optical line systems, including open line system. And we should have a good 10 minutes for Q&A at the end. So please, hopefully there's a lot of questions, and hopefully you ask them, and we'll get to as many as we can. The project itself, we do a number of these market leader projects, and they have a similar format, of course, different topics. This one is on automation for transport networks. And just to give you a sense of scope, that includes transport, pretty broadly defined, packet layer transport, IP and Ethernet, optical layer, as well as a lot of focus on multi-vendor, multi-domain, and then on multi-layer, moving across packet and optical layers. The basis of the project is a global survey. We completed that survey in May, so it is very fresh results, as I noted. It's a global survey, 78 respondents in the end. I'll give a little brief view of the demographics of the survey in a moment. Of course, the readout is today on this webinar, so thanks for joining. There'll also be a white paper coming in July. I'm just putting the finishing touches on that, actually hoping to glean a couple additional insights from this webinar and put them into the paper. And then there'll be a set of analyst blogs written by me over the coming month or two. Demographics. Larger operators represented, typically for our light reading surveys, as well as a geographic split of we shoot for about half North America, half all other regions. You can see the breakout there. For this one, 100% of them involved in network planning and purchasing or core purchasing. Also, all of the companies we included are either using or planning transport automation. So we really did want people kind of in the know of automation for transport and already had some views to lend on the topic. So it does skew a bit more towards, people involved in transport automation, which is great. Here's our panelists. I'll introduce them briefly, and then we'll hear from them quite a bit as we go through the next hour. Kent Jordan, representing Ciena, advisor of portfolio marketing, also joined by Teresa Montero, director of marketing with Infinera. Joe Maserino, principal solutions architect in the packet optical networking group within Fujitsu, and then Kanika Atri, Senior Director, Product Management, Strategy and Business Development, representing Juniper today. So welcome all, and as I said, we'll hear from everyone in a bit, actually quite a bit. Let me kick off the content with timelines and requirements. Looking at first, starting with the importance of automation for the transport network. It's one of the basic questions we asked right up front. How important is automation for your next generation transport strategy? It was really quite an amazing result from my view. 93% of the respondents view transport automation as at least important for their next generation transport strategy. Important being defined as automation will be used extensively, but there are other factors more important. And then also combined with really an astounding number on critical. 39% automation will be primary pillar of the network going forward. We ask this type of question a lot in different surveys, and to get at 39% in critical is quite very unusual. So this is showing that we're really hitting on an important topic here, no doubt. Different timelines. So on the left is the global results. On the right is the group that, if you look at that group that said automation was critical, we've actually carved them out in a lot of the data as priority adopters or early adopters, and just seeing how they respond. So this one on the global results, about a third of them saying, or exactly a third, currently deployed or plan to deploy in 2022. So, fairly aggressive. But when we carved out that priority group, the 39% that said it's critical, 74% of them have either already deployed automation or plan to by the end of the year. So again, that gives us, in looking at those results through the survey, it really gives us a little bit of a sneak peek, I think, of where the market is going to head. And we'll do that a bit here and also in the white paper itself. So let me just kind of break into the discussion here. Use cases for automation. This is one of the early questions we asked as well. Which of the following transport network use cases are you planning to automate within the next two years? And you can see the list. I've organized them here in descending order. Traffic engineering emerging as a top priority, but also you could see at over 40% response, provisioning, network inventory, and configuration also scoring quite highly. Let me bring in Kanika from Juniper to kick off the discussion here. I guess first, thoughts on how the automation use cases came in, and then secondly, in terms of your own customer discussions, how does the results here fit with what you hear from customers?
Thanks for inviting me to comment. Well, first of all, I'm not surprised at all, given the kind of demographics that you shared are mostly people who are already using some kind of automation, or they know it's very critical and they're investing in it. That's why I see some of the more advanced use cases like traffic engineering top of their list. To your question on, how we are seeing the customers' response to some of the use cases, I mean, as part of my job in, owning the whole portfolio for automation for Juniper, I talk to lots of customers, and, they don't do automation for automation's sake. They're doing it to drive business outcomes. And when I ask them, what are the business outcomes that you want to achieve, they basically say two things. One category says, well, I want automation to help me simplify those daily, manual, repetitive tasks and make them so scalable, repeatable, high quality that I can close my eyes and rinse, repeat them, right? So that's one category of use cases, stuff like, software upgrades, stuff like activations, testing, provisioning. And you'll be surprised, even there, there's a huge role, even for those who've adopted automation, there is a huge scope to actually improve the total time it takes, right? Even a software upgrade today takes days, weeks sometimes. And then the second category of outcomes that my customers are telling me is really those complex things. Like even if you throw more humans at the problem, you won't be able to solve it, right? These are things like assuring your network and service performance, your KPIs, optimizing capacity autonomously, reducing the risk. And that is sort of the second category where you see use cases like traffic engineering, where you see things like predictive analytics, right? So I think this reflects the responses you see here. It reflects a very healthy mix of both categories of use cases we hear about. And it reflects also the stage at which these operators are. They always start with the easy manual stuff, and then they go to the more complex things, which is also a function of how much traffic and how big their network is and how complex it is.
Yeah, good points on the bit of a skew of the audience that responded, because we did kick out companies that did not have the 5-year window to implement automation. We did not include them. So this is more, which is typical of our surveys. It's a bit more of an advanced view of the overall group, because it's kind of self-select. People that are interested in investigating the topic already will want to respond. And then second to that, though, although I don't show the breakout here, but then when you take that critical or early adopters group, then you really get the leading edge. I don't think the leading edge group was tremendously different from here, because I didn't provide a breakout, but there were some differences. But this is kind of a mix of everybody, and this is what you get. Joe, any thoughts or comments, just to bring in Joe from Fujitsu, any thoughts or comments you wanted to make in terms of the grouping and breadth of use cases here?
Sure. Thanks, Sterling. In fact, one of the things that I noted was technologies required in order to implement, these levels of automation. Key to this use case automation is optical orchestration. Automation enabled by open APIs for optimal use case operation. Essentially, you need a combination of optical orchestration, SDN domain control, analytics, and MLAI. And through these technologies all working together, you achieve that level of automation, that zero-touch operations that Kanika was also reflecting in results that she was seeing.
All right, excellent. We've got, of course, a lot more detail we'll go into. So just one final note on this for the audience. So this was, as I said, holistically a survey of transport automation. This was a general question, automation broadly defined. What are the use cases? We will dig into different areas of automation. And we'll actually, I think, revisit the use cases a bit in different areas as we go into cloud automation or cloud-based automation in a moment. And then we talk quite a bit about the optical layer, and there would be differences. But this was the broad brush, automation and transport. What are you planning? And it is a nearer term window of the 2 years. Let me share one more slide here on the more general broad trends, and then from there we'll dig into the cloud automation specifically. But on this one, of course, it's always important as an analyst to ask about what are the barriers to adopting technologies. And the one that came up top here, what are the primary barriers for automating your transport networks? Generic automation frameworks, slow to tailor to our needs, ranked as the chief barrier, selected by 40%. And then you can see there's really another 3 that bubble to the top as well, which are fairly closely aligned in percentage of response. Lack of in-house software expertise, execution complexity, cost too high, lack of budget. Those tend to be the top. I don't have the breakout here, but I did break out in parsing the results, the priority adopters, and they do have a slightly different skew versus the non-priority, or kind of the, not to say laggards, because nobody's quite a laggard at this point, but the others group. The priority adopters really keying in on the generic frameworks as their top challenge. Interestingly, and not surprising, when we broke out by the others group, the non-priority group, lack of in-house software expertise was the top one, as well as lack of budget. So you get a sense that this priority group has moved fast, they've hired the right people, they've got the budget, and now what are they running into? And it's this frameworks challenge. I don't, I'm not going to go into discussion on this one yet. I'm just putting it out here, but I think as we get through other areas of discussion, I think we can kind of revisit the slide and some of these points as we go through. And I think one of those areas where the challenges may come back. is as we get into the discussion of the cloud automation, which I'll move into now. And yeah, so again, this is getting kind of drilling down into specific areas. So in this case, we asked, does your organization plan to use transport network automation applications from the cloud? And here, what I did is give the full global results on the left, and then did one of those early adopters or priority adopters versus other breakout to show some differences. On the left, you know, public and private hybrid, 52% saying they would use cloud in that fashion. 31% fairly high saying private cloud. From the global results, a bit of hesitancy to go to straight public cloud only. Interestingly, when we looked at the early adopters, which is the orange bar on the right, tremendous interest in public and private hybrid, 76%, and much less private cloud only among them as you compare that to the others group. So you can really see, I think, kind of an evolution of thought and maybe comfort. Kanika, I know you and Juniper were instrumental in some of these cloud questions. Thoughts here?
I'm actually very positively encouraged to see these results. It's synonymous with what we are hearing. And it kind of ties back nicely into your slide around barriers to adoption. If you think about some of those barriers, right? Generic automation framework, not enough software development expertise, too complex. They're all interrelated. And they're interrelated to that idea of many of the operators trying to kind of build their own organic DIY monolithic systems that somewhat are analogous to boiling the ocean. And what's happened since is, you know, we actually saw another survey which said 80% of these DIY projects, they kind of failed in terms of delivering the first business outcomes, and their management challenging the ROI. Hey, show me the returns, right? So that mentality now, we are seeing the management, asking those questions and saying, hey, instead of boiling the ocean, go fast, but start small. Start with one problem you want to automate, show me the results, go to the next. And when you want to do that, cloud is the best delivery model to get there, because you can get started with no overhead. You know, you literally just hook up your device and you select one use case. You don't have to go all in. And, you know, you can start running that, automate just that, for example, device onboarding or ZTP or just inventory, right? Pick one from that list, just automate that, but show the outcome in 3 months versus 3 years. So that's what we are hearing, and that's one of the rationale why we are actually seeing some of the forward-looking, you know, operators who've kind of been there, done that, burned their hands, and now they want to, you know, reap the benefits of the cloud.
Yeah, interesting, that connection between the challenge of the generic framework, which again really came through in this survey, and as you noted from your own separate research and conversations to how the cloud can help. Let me advance this one here, and Kanika, I'll keep you on to weigh in here. So this was one where we took those use cases for automation and said which ones are of primary interest or to be considered first for public cloud-based automation and transport. And you can see, the audience can see the mix here. I guess my one observation, and I'll let you comment, is my middle bullet. The cloud usage, it did show a fair but not exact alignment with the general use case priorities. Any thoughts here on how these cloud use cases came up and how they compare, and just any more thoughts? And then I did want to bring in another topic with you as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you think about these use cases, they're a mix of management plane, control plane, and of course, data plane. So we're not obviously touching the data plane at all. But if it's really just about observing a network, that's a little bit more management, or touching the network, changing a piece of config here and there. There is a much greater comfort level of the operators to do those use cases from the cloud. But when it comes to control layer use cases, right, in the future, things like network slicing or traffic engineering, it's not everybody. I mean, that's where maybe our conversations is a little bit different from this survey, and I'm actually happier to see these results here. But we do see some hesitation there where, oh, okay, in control plane, right, like, is it going to add a latency? Where are you going to render it from? So there are a lot of things that we do unblock, and eventually I believe all these use cases will be cloud delivered. That is no doubt the future, but I do believe there's a crawl, walk, run to that stage, and we will start initially with the easier sort of management plane use cases.
Yeah, I'm just thinking on that traffic engineering, because we've been discussing that a bit offline. I'm thinking it through. So in my discussions, segment routing is definitely very tied to traffic engineering, and that, we call that SDN. We certainly call that automation. I am seeing a pretty strong pickup in interest in moving with segment routing, and it is coming through in other surveys. I imagine when we talk about set traffic engineering here, perhaps that is part of what a lot of operators have for their segment routing. Would you agree?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like the SDN controller, and particularly shift to SR, is critical to this whole piece. Yes.
Yeah, and there's a number of operators I've been talking to. I've just been surprised at how quickly that is moving forward from. Again, this is a bit more skewed towards more advanced companies generally, so it makes sense that in context. So Juniper has, and you've been talking about an automation as a service concept, so I wanted to let you weigh in on that to close out this section, and I believe you do have a contributed slide there, so I'll let you introduce the concept, define it, and really just, why is this important? What's the value?
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. So, I personally, and at Juniper, we all believe that the future of automation is delivered from the cloud. The guiding principles are, first, speed. Automation is all about moving at the pace of business, not at the pace of internal systems. And today, that is one of the big barriers, right? And cloud is all about moving fast. It's, quick time to market. Second guiding principle is, automation should let you focus on productivity, not on production, right? So there should not be any overheads to kind of manage the whole infrastructure, hardware, software, lifecycle, the 25 different components from open source, from vendors, from your own. You're basically heavily, becoming a software development house yourself, rather than focusing on solving network problems. You are, there's an overhead, and cloud solves that. I mean, that's just not sustainable, right? And thirdly, it's the easy button, right? Like there's a whole lot of simplicity with cloud that you can really get to with complex in-house systems. It's really hard to kind of make it simple and consumable. So we believe the key success factors for automation, number one, in the future, is going to be delivered from the cloud. That's why we at Juniper are doubling down on it. In addition to that, this whole idea of use case based, right? Go small, but go fast. And then, move from there, right? Don't boil the ocean. And, the second part is AI enabled. AI is going to be an intrinsic part of the whole cloud infrastructure. The data layers, the training layers are going to be built into that cloud infrastructure. And the value of AI is multiplied tenfolds when the data is coming from all the different sources, which means that a problem discovered in one network in North America would be solved even before somebody in APAC sees it, And again, all of this is anonymized. So the power of AI is basically multiplied by cloud. And we believe it makes sense to do AI ops only when delivered from the cloud. So that's the second key success factor. The third thing, we believe is, as part of any kind of automation solution, active assurance is really critical. It's almost like saying, well, I spotted an issue, I figured out why it happened, I fixed it, but hey, did you go back and actually check it worked? And that's the idea of active assurance. So you need to actually go back and check and verify everything. And this idea of verification has to be, built into automation. At Juniper, we're doing that both at a hardware level as well as a software level, right? And our active assurance solution has a component embedded into our routers, where you can basically, your router becomes an assurance agent, right? And then the last idea that is very important for success is security and trust. And that also is both, at the hardware level. So at Juniper, we believe you have to have, things like TPM 2.0, those kind of unique identifiers built into hardware to make sure absolutely unbreakable, hardware out there. And at the same time, top it up with as a service, security, trust, all those things to make sure that this entire cloud operation is absolutely, safe and secure. So we are thrilled to drive this future, and we'll be delighted to talk more, and you'll hear from us more on this very soon.
All right, excellent. Thank you. And yeah, we've done some other survey data that does have some fairly strong supporting data behind some of what you just brought out there. So looking forward to how that progresses. Let's move on into the next section. So we're moving into the optical transport portion. We had a number of questions here in the survey, and so let me just start introducing them here, and I think we'll have some interesting discussion around these as well. So, really starting at the top, typical question we ask in our surveys, what's driving automation, and specifically here for open optical networks? What are the most important drivers for managing and automating your open optical network? And again, you can see the percentages and how they came in. We put them in descending order. Capacity, visibility, and resiliency really bubbling to the top. Maybe bring in Ciena to kick off this discussion. Kent, I believe you were quite interested in this question in the survey. Ciena was. Thoughts on how this came back? Any observations?
Yeah, so these results really, like you said, they're showing that service providers are looking for automation to really help with some of the higher level functions in the optical network, things like optimizing their capacity or improving the visibility of the network, getting better network resiliency. And I can provide a few examples of how some of those things are being delivered today. So there are apps that exist to help optimize capacity across CNL band-based networks that can provide time series analysis of performance measurements from modems to be able to help service providers optimize their capacity. And if you look at optimizing things like spectral allocation within the fiber, that opens up opportunities for new applications like spectral defrag, where you can then further optimize the fiber utilization. And Ciena's been developing apps and features in a number of the areas on this slide for quite a few years, and network operators are now using these tools and applications in their optical networks today with, I would say, kind of the lead applications for automation in this area are really around providing real-time visibility into how the network is operating, which is something that they didn't have the ability to see before. And over time, we expect these types of applications to be used in new ways and in more sophisticated ways.
All right, excellent. I know we had a fair amount of panelists that were interested in this topic. Joe, any additional thoughts or comments on this one?
Sure. Optimizing capacity and fiber utilization through automation provides just more accurate results than the manual tuning methods. The manual performance optimization requires highly skilled people, expensive test equipment, and also manual measurements and tuning takes just too much time to implement. And then there's also the human error factor in collecting those results. So having that complete automation capability within your system operations really improves on the efficiency, on the delivery of your overall services. And also regarding end-to-end network visibility and OEM automation will simplify that the system operations for lifecycle management and future service additions.
All right, excellent. Last word, if there is, Teresa from Infinera to bring you in, but if we've covered it all, that's fine too. Any final thoughts on this, Teresa?
Yes, I have two observations, and thank you for having me here, Sterling. First of all, I do understand, and we hear it from customers, the interest in optimizing capacity and making the best out of the resources. But if I read the title of this question, drivers for automating the open optical network, and if I focus on that open, then I think the point of end-to-end network visibility is a real critical one, because when you're moving from a closed system where end-to-end network visibility is a given, and you move to open, you worry, am I going to lose that end-to-end network visibility? So I think that's an interesting point to keep in mind. The other observation I would like to make is, well, you have there a bullet that says automated system turn-up is secondary. But I was playing with some of the survey results, and I filtered the results for this question for the participants who are focusing on the optical technology. And what we see is that for those, the system turn-up, the simplified wavelength turn-up, the automated calculation of the coherent transponder parameters become much more relevant, because at the end, and they would go to levels as high as 45% or around so, because they're the ones who are undertaking their tasks. Therefore, they understand the benefits that automating the service provisioning bring. Those would be my comment.
Good points on both. You've got automation of the transport network generally, and then open, and then keying in on open. How is that? They're kind of two, or open's a subset of your overall. And also, good point. I had not done that filter. That was a good one. There's many ways we can filter these results that I kind of keyed in on the early adopters, but that was a great nuance to add. Let me go to so this next question on optical layer functions. What functions do you need from the optical layer? And so this was kind of more general. We got some strong results at the top two there. Ability to move capacity flexibly, and then ability to easily connect new locations and minimize truck rolls, et cetera. Teresa, since we've got you on, I'll let you kick off this one, and feel free to agree or disagree or add to what I've kind of bulleted out there.
Thank you, Sterling. So I was really happy to see that these results confirm our understanding that the optical layer is no longer this static, over-provisioned connectivity or pipe, set of pipes, basically, where other layers run into. This is not enough anymore. Operators need to scale fast. They need to use their resources more efficiently, and they need to enable new business models, bandwidth on demand, network as a service. For that, they need, on one hand, the programmable infrastructure that allows them to move the capacity flexibly, but they also need the software that supports that. And I'm going to move actually to the next slide, because, oops.
There we go.
Sorry. No, thank you. Because that's actually what we call instant bandwidth at Infinera. The support for pre-deploying hardware that has a very large capacity pool that can be incrementally activated. You activate it with a click, where you need, when you need, and you pay as you grow. So I think this is the type of automation solutions that operators are looking for when they talk ability of moving capacity around, ability of turning up new services with as little truck rolls as possible.
All right, excellent. Let me go back on this. And then Kent, we do need to move along because there's a fair amount in this section. But Kent, if you have some thoughts or observations here, I'll let you actually close this one out, and then we'll go to the next question.
Okay, yeah, I'll try to shorten up my response. But I agree. It's great to see that this question shows that network operators really understand how the optical layer can help them develop a much more automated network. It's not just us that believe it, but I think that, this result shows that they believe it. They're not looking for a dumb pipe optical layer that's only providing connectivity. They want some value add from the optical layer, whether it's additional intelligence, resiliency, ease of use, or flexibility. And a lot of that can be delivered, like was already said, through combination of hardware like ROADM, layer 0 control plane software, architecting hardware so that you can minimize truck rolls, and new applications like one that we have, which is called liquid restoration, that can be used to provide more resiliency without additional investment in the network. And it does that by identifying additional restoration paths for each home path in the network, including paths where wavelengths could be restored maybe at a lower rate to partially restore services and help maximize the resiliency of that existing network.
All right, excellent. Let me go to the next one. We have a lot of good data, but in the end there might be a bit too much for 1 hour. Managing multi-vendor networks, another interesting question. Kent, since you're on, I'll let you continue here. Which of the following are part of your goals for managing your multi-vendor transport networks? And again, you can see the percentages descending. Thoughts and comments on this slide?
Yeah, so multi-vendor, as you can see from the results, it's a big topic, and it's exciting to see that there's a lot of interest in many of the responses. Ciena is working with operators in this area who want to be able to make sure that their network architecture is open and doesn't impose restrictions on the technology and whose technology that they can deploy. So typically we'll look at things like visualization and control, being able to visualize third-party optics across a Ciena line system using an open interface like an open config interface, to discover topology between that transponder and the Ciena line system, and then being able to control that transponder, provisioning and pushing parameters into it. Some of that may actually require some development, resource adapter development, for example, being able to use those open interfaces to set things like frequency, launch power, and so on. And then after we've kind of got that base visualization and control, we look at things like streaming telemetry to pull in alarm data, PMs from the device, to track metrics over time, maybe look for specific alarms to be more reactive. And so I think we see that open APIs, visualization, control and analytics, troubleshooting, these are all important aspects of open multi-vendor networking.
All right. And Joe, I think you wanted to comment on this one. If you can do a quick comment, because we've got two more in this section I want to hit and then cover the last section.
Sure. In fact, just drilling down into some of the technologies involved in attaining, these types of results. Advanced transponder DSP technology using MLAI in conjunction with the orchestrator to simplify execution of these functions. This essentially enables a real-time capture of your optical layer metrics, which then can be used to automate the network, capture the characteristics of the fiber to optimize your service performance end-to-end.
All right, excellent. We've got, so then we wanted to address planning tools, and again, keyed into open here. What type of tool will you use for planning services over an open optical networking? Open optical network. Teresa, I know you contributed several of the questions on the Infinera side around the open optical. Thoughts or comments on this one?
Yeah, I'll try to be quick. As you mentioned, their operators strongly favor planning tools supplied by an equipment vendor. But on the other hand, they want multi-vendor planning tools, which is all fine if you think we're talking about open optical planning. And I think actually the concern here, and this comes from many discussions with customers, is that we as vendors are not yet doing our best to share details on our devices and share them in a uniform and consistent manner, so that these tools can have the information required, in particular if you want to plan networks that require high optical performance. But I think operators are doing their job, doing a great job there, and pushing us vendors to go more into these cooperative or competitive cooperative mode of information where we walk the walk of open, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, interesting point. And it does show fairly clearly that 41% versus 28% is the second, that it is fairly strong finding. Let me go to the last one.
Vendor,
go ahead.
Sorry, I just wanted to, the vendor basically owns the planning solution then, and that's a better ownership than that of open source, where the ownership is undefined.
Right, the open source was quite secondary there, but still some interest for sure. Last on this topic, and then we'll move into the line system, and then I think we've got a little bit of debate within that section, so I'm quite curious how that plays out. Machine learning, so looking specifically at machine learning's impact, which functions will benefit the most from machine learning in an open optical network, and 3 tied, and it was a bit unusual, but these are, you can't get more equal than that. You can see the top 3: network design, predictive health, predictive traffic growth as the top opportunities. Teresa, to close out this section, is that consistent with your discussions and really what Infinera is planning itself?
It is very much consistent. I would say there's lots of complex problems in open optical where machine learning can help, offering faster solutions that are more accurate maybe than the deterministic algorithms that exist today. But the killer use cases are still a bit open in the air. There's lots of discussions and proofs of concepts, and we have actually a lot of white papers published on machine learning for quality of transmission. That's related to the first item that you have there. Also machine learning for preventive maintenance, predicting the network health, also there. So I think those topics are still maturing, let's say, until we find the ones where there's really an advantage in using these technologies. Predictive traffic growth, on the other hand, I don't think it has been talked so much in terms of machine learning. Obviously, there are some studies, but I think that's maybe because the old traffic growth models that operators have been using for metro or for long haul may be changing with distributed computing and coherent going down to the edge. Maybe now there's a larger uncertainty and more concern on how are the traffic patterns going to change. Now, the self-tunable transponders, I'm pretty sure, and actually I've looked into it, if you also again select the participants, the respondents who are focused on optical technology, that also becomes another contender for machine learning as significant as the others. That would be my remark.
Interesting. I'll certainly parse it that way when I complete the report part. Good observations. Let's move to the last section. We are running a bit behind, but Joe, on the line system, I know Fujitsu is interested in several of these topics. I'll let you kick off this one. The most important drivers for deploying a new line system. This was my view. Curious what your thoughts, but certainly savings in capacity are the typical drivers that we see in optical networks to move forward. Open architectures came in third, but not a weak third. It's definitely third, but it wasn't the primary driver. Thoughts on how these played out, Joe?
Excellent points that were mentioned here, and I essentially see 2 technology areas that address these important drivers for deploying a new line system. Essentially, new amplifier technology and the use of both C and L bands. In the new amplifier techniques that are offered, minimizing relative intensity noise, or RIN, reducing the cost per bit per kilometer, along with offering higher GSNR. This means a higher order modulation. Essentially, more bits per hertz can be used within the spectral width, enabling an overall fiber capacity increase or better utilization of the fiber. Use of the L band, although the L band has traditionally not been as cost-effective or as widely deployed as the C band on the ROADM or line system. Its strong transmission characteristics have made it an ideal complement to C-band for expanding system capacity. And instead of using add-on modification to the existing optical line system, a new continuous C plus L system using a single WSS in the ROADM will simplify operations, eliminate any potential blocking, essentially also providing a major cost savings by basically having the amount of equipment needed to implement the optical line system.
Yeah, good point on CNL and incapacity. We're certainly seeing that as well. Let me go to this one, and then we've got two more after this to close out. Operational challenges, Joe, I guess we'll let you hang in to weigh in on this one. The most difficult operational challenges when planning, deploying anything greater than a 2-degree optical line system. Really, yeah, big one showing here. Lack of modern planning tools is a major challenge. It's quite clear finding. I'm assuming it's consistent with what you're seeing, but what do you think?
Absolutely. And in fact, to overcome these challenges, we begin with open APIs, along with a combination, as I mentioned earlier in the webinar, optical orchestration, SDN domain control, and intelligent optics, offering analytics and MLAI. This combination will offer real-time wavelength optimization, simplifying planning, installation, and ongoing operations. This combination of technology will also reduce the dependence on highly skilled technical staff through efficiencies that can be implemented as well.
All right, excellent. And then let's get into where two of the interesting, I mean, there are many interesting ones. I particularly found this one interesting, and I think you guys did as well. Moving into open line system architectures, which are operators planning to deploy. 47% saying open line system with a single vendor, with multi-vendor coherent optical networking, interworking. This is really a mix and match of transponders being preferred by this group. And then second, but fairly distant, open line system from a single vendor with a bookended approach. I'm a bit, well, somewhat surprised by this, but it is fairly clear. Kent from Ciena, I'll let you give the kind of the leading view on this one. Thoughts and comments, and was this a surprise for you?
Yeah, I think these results are pretty interesting. I mean, they show that there's a lot of excitement and willingness to deploy multi-vendor coherent optics. And so I'm a little surprised at the result without knowing more behind the data, because it's typically much easier to deploy that middle option. And we've seen several service providers that have made announcements that they are deploying that partially disaggregated model. And we have many customers that are deploying that one that's in the middle of the chart, so the partially disaggregated bookended transponder model. Of course, you've got things like OIF 400ZR with interoperability that's available, so that could be driving some of the result, but ultimately moving to that top option may mean some extra integration work that'll need to be done. And at the end of the day, from a vendor perspective, we support all three models, and we have customers that are interested in all three. We have Coherent optics that do offer that interoperability, whether you want to do that or the bookended transponder. But I think it's going to be interesting to see how many operators actually do adopt and deploy that first option over, the second option.
Yeah, good point. Teresa, I don't know if you did your optical specialist analysis on this one, but you want to weigh in on how these came in?
I do. So optical experts support the fully disaggregated open line system with full interworking. Only 6% of them support that approach. And I mean, that's clear. It's them who have to make it all work and come together nicely. So, but thank you for sharing.
So the overall company may have interest, but the optics group is saying this is going to be a tough, yeah, interesting. Joe, any last word on this slide? And then we have one more that's another interesting topic to hit.
Sure. And we can see from the survey results that network providers are still split on what shade of open to use, and single vendor OLS, multi-vendor coherent optics. It's optimized for Metro. Metro works best in this environment. You still require interop testing, but then there's also the service impact of troubleshooting challenges that one can expect. On that second point, single vendor open line systems with bookended transponders, I see this as optimized more for long distance networks, having that bookended transponder where the FEC long distance performance is achieved through those bookended optics.
All right, excellent. Let's close out with this one, which could be and has been its own topic of a full webinar. But on this one, what are the challenges managing coherent pluggable optics, which is really referring to the IP over DWDM architectures? And the biggest one, at least for the full survey group, was maintaining the existing operational practices of these separate groups. Joe, I'll let you close out on this topic.
Thank you. While economically appealing to first costs, it essentially opens the door to adversely impacting existing operational practices affecting MTTR, performance, QoS, and potentially service availability, as well as the cultural and organizational challenges that tend to weaken business strategy. I see, we see a way around this as this challenge. It's to essentially coordinate the optical and IP controllers in that the optical controller manages pluggables like a transponder end-to-end. The optical controller provides open APIs like TAPI, for example, to the layer 3 controller. And then the layer 3 controller maintains IP routing with knowledge of the end-to-end optical connection.
All right. You know what? Maybe Ken, I'm just thinking that on Infinera's side, on Ciena's side, that you've certainly done a fairly broad foray into the pluggable optics. And also given your comments on the last question, any insights to add on this particular one, and then we'll go to Q&A.
Yeah, so I think, I don't want to downplay these challenges because I think some of them really are challenges. And many network operators, service providers are definitely seeing the potential benefits of converging their IP and optical layers instead of operating in traditional silos. However, many of the platforms, so the routers and switches that the coherent plugs are being put into, don't allow or enable open northbound interfaces to allow third-party management of that plug. So if you don't access that plug, you can't manage it. And you need basic information to be able to manage the network like it's done today without taking a step backwards. And as an industry, we've made a lot of advancements with respect to opening up the line system. You've seen a lot of that in the presentation today, gaining visibility to what's happening in the network. And if you put a plug in a router, you don't want to lose that capability. Management needs to be on par with what you're doing today, where you're doing things separately. So I think the second piece is, in addition to that, base management, network operators also want to take advantage of any of the DSP technology advancements that are going into those plugs. And again, not having access to the data that's coming out of the, performance data that's coming out of those modems in those plugs is a barrier to getting to that detailed optical performance analysis, which is one of the challenges here. So getting direct access for the controller to the Coherent plug through an open northbound interface enables both the base management of that plug and also lets the operators get maximum ROI on their optical investments. So I think, these challenges, there is some work still to be done here.
Right. These things don't happen. A lot of times the timeline is, the wish list is a year out, but they tend to take a lot longer for these big mega trends. We have a few minutes left for Q&A. We did have a lot of content. There's actually more in the survey, and this is just a fraction of it. So there's a ton of data in here, but let's get it to a couple of the questions. Maybe Kanika, there were actually a few questions that did come in around the automation side early on. Let me bring you back in. Question: are there specific WAN dominance, WAN domain / role? Is there a specific WAN domain / role where automation is more critical than other parts of the network? So I guess where is specifically in the network, where is automation going to play most heavily in your view?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. Specifically, if you look at the traffic patterns, metro is the home, is kind of the new edge, right? That's where all the service distribution is going to happen off from. That's where much of the traffic patterns are changing, east-west. The complexity, the scale is growing. So, we think automation build out with Cloud Metro goes hand in hand really well. The other new domains where I feel like, where the next new technology introduction is happening, that's all going to be automation-led, meaning automation not as an afterthought, but really right from the start. Examples being, I think integrated optics is one of them. I think we talked a lot about it, right? Things like scale-out, fabrics, scale-out fabrics in the WAN side, BNG cups and some domains. So some of the new domains, but right now, I definitely see Metro as the biggest opportunity to go in with automation first.
All right, excellent. Let me go to, this was an interesting one, and actually I've done a bit of work on this. Question came in, will digital twins help the automation process? Joe, I'll let you give at least the initial response on this, but I do think it's an interesting question.
Sure, thank you, Sterling. So, yes, absolutely. Delivering digital twins of the network helps simplify full life cycle of system O&M and future service additions. Optimizing capacity, improving network availability, and essentially minimizing your CapEx.
All right, excellent. I did a white paper around just that very thing, specific to research management, which is one of the early use cases of interest. Question on, and we got about 2 to 3 minutes left. So for the audience, you can certainly ask your questions. If we don't get them, our panelists are going to be happy, I'm sure, to follow up individually. But we do have some great questions in. How do you combine the development of the programmability of the network versus the new features in your own network management system? Interesting, and I'm sure relevant for many. Ken, I'll let you take this one.
Yeah, I think this one's I think this one's pretty important because automation is increasingly a key business challenge that service providers are focused on. And from a development perspective, operational features and functionality is a key aspect that we as a vendor are focusing on developing. But we've got to, closely align the programmability, flexibility, capability of the hardware and software on the network elements with, the capabilities that are being developed on the network management system, and even things like being able to do testing more quickly by, like, let's say, doing your integration testing in the cloud can help with some of this speeding up, adoption of new features and functionality for automation. So you can actually do now testing on virtualized network elements that are running the same software that you would have in the real network. So if you've got, testing being done in different countries or time zones, that'll help speed up that testing so you can deliver, new services based on these new features quicker.
All right, excellent. And we are at the top of the hour. I'll close out with one last question. Infinera, Teresa, I'll let you close out the Q&A with this one, because I don't think I let you comment on this area so much when we were kind of wrapping up. Why is the management of Coherent Plugable any different from the current optical management? Again, some of that may have been addressed, but there is a question in, and if you want to add to that discussion,
Thank you, Sterling. That's a question where it's hard to be short, but I'll try. So if you're using a traditional optical network with transponders, your transponders will have a very rich interface that's specific and dedicated to optical management and functionality. With pluggables, your management is typically done with protocols like CMIS, which are registered based and very narrow in scope, even though they're evolving. So from that point of view, the functionalities that you have accessible are different, and you don't want that your management is actually blocking the evolution of functionalities that your optical pluggable, more and more sophisticated, can deliver. So that's one concern. The other concern is if you go through the router to access the pluggable, typically you'll interface with an IP controller, while usually in an optical network you have an optical controller. That also introduces some subtleties in the management and maybe impacts in mode of operation. But I think actually that there's a great document, a specification that was published yesterday just by chance by the Open XR Forum on a management approach to coherent optical pluggables that complements the traditional management protocols. I invite everyone to go and check it. It's worth to read.
I did see that out. I haven't read it yet. I was going to make a comment, and you kind of led into it, that coherent optics, one of the trends we're following is of course, it started in the long haul. It's moving more and more closer to the user over time. XR optics is one example of that, but there are other areas as well, and it's a big area of research for us is how far coherent's going to go and at what data rate. With that, we are past the hour. I appreciate everybody for tuning in. Thanks for your great questions. We will follow up with the white paper, and please look out for it when it's completed in July, which has a lot more detail. And of course, thank you to our sponsors and to each of the speakers today for your insights, and of course for helping out with this entire project. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much.